Thank you. Fred?
Let's take Fred.
Let's take Fred. Fred in Florida. You're live with Eric and V. How are you doing?
Hi, Eric. Hi, V. I'm fine. How are you doing?
Doing good.
Doing well. The caffeine is starting to kick in. I'm ready.
Very good.
What do you want to talk about?
I wanted to talk about near-death experiences being evidence of that there is an afterlife. I mean, there's a lot of people that have had them. There's, peer-reviewed articles on them. And, the Bible tells us that there is an afterlife. And
so does every other religion,
gosh,
or most of them. So why are you picking on the Bible?
Correct. Well, because I'm not picking on it.
Well,
I'm
picking it.
Picking it because it's my belief.
And, well, let's start with the claim that there's life after death. So I need you to understand that my definition of life is entirely tied to this physical body. When my heartbeat stops, when the functions of this body stop and my brain completely stops, I will no longer be alive. And it appears to me that you're not using that definition. So how do you define life? Let's start there.
Well, life, I guess, gosh, I really never thought about it. I guess it would be, consciousness, though.
Okay.
So, if you have a soul that has consciousness after you die, that lives on beyond your body, I guess that would be life after death.
Can I ask you a question, Fred?
And, life, of course, we have physical life.
Well, so I have a question for you. You can be rendered unconscious. Does that mean that you were not alive during that time?
No.
Okay, so then maybe we need to workshop life a little bit more. I understand consciousness, though, and I'll, if we want to go down that path, I'm happy to. When we talk about consciousness, we're talking about something that's entirely physical. What part of consciousness is attributable to the soul versus the body? Because we can demonstrably show that consciousness and thought, that all happens physically. So what's left for the soul?
Well, of course, if you're going to deny that there's any life, anything after it, of course, you're looking at the physical and say there is nothing after that and it can't happen. Well, that's one way of just not even talking about it and just dismissing the millions of people.
Fred, I'm not trying to dismiss it at all. Okay. But I want to...
My mistake then?
No, that's okay. And I'm glad you brought it up because that means that a lot of people heard that and probably got the exact same conclusion that you did. So please let me rephrase that.
Okay.
Before we talk about the characteristics of a thing, right? Before and after, what it does and how it does it, we first need to understand what that thing is. And I don't think that we both have a functional definition for what a soul is at all, more or less what it does, right? We have to first understand the thing.
Well, I think your soul to me is your mind, will, and emotions. It's what you are, without your body. It's you, who you are, but regardless of your body or not. And then I believe that lives on.
Okay. Well, you said mind, body, and emotions, right?
Mind, will.
Mind, will, and emotions. Thank you.
Yeah. Mu. Okay. Just remember mind, emotion, will. Mu. Like
Got
a
it.
cat.
Okay. So let's
That's
start.
how I remember it.
Let's start with mind. Are you aware that we have studied people who have had traumatic brain injuries and have drastically changed their personality, their tastes, their habits, that we are able to pinpoint parts of the brain even that are responsible for those things?
Well, I believe that. Sure, of course.
Like if
I didn't know that there was a study like that, but
there are tons. It's amazing.
It's a really fascinating area.
It is, and it's definitely worth checking out. And I think I could probably give you a very, very lay example, and that is lobotomy. Right, the practice of lobotomy was destroying the frontal lobe of the brain, and essentially turning somebody into this very docile person who has completely lost that personality.
Or Phineas Gage.
Phineas Gage is amazing. Please.
Phineas Gage was in the 1800s. He was working on a railway line, and a metal spike went through his head, into his head, and they thought he was going to die. But they removed the spike, and turns out he survived, but his personality completely changed because of the damage done to the frontal part of his brain. And that was kind of like the test case for a lot of these other studies about, where the different parts of the brain lead you and where they influence. So yeah, I'd suggest you do some research on that if you're looking for some really basic beginner level, like, what happens when you mess with parts of the brain to your personality.
So we talked about...
Go ahead.
Oh, well, we talked about mind, and I think that can also lead into will. I think that looking up Skinner, what was his first name? He really did a lot when it came to kind of programming the will of a creature.
Yeah, I know. I don't know.
B.F. Skinner. There we go. Definitely look up that. And then also free will is another conversation that takes an entire call. But so we got mind, we got will, and emotion. We can control for emotions, right? You can take medications that can stop or empower emotions. That without those chemicals in the brain allowing that emotion, you don't feel it. And I actually got called out the other day because I was saying it's just in the brain. It's also in the gut.
Yep.
And different hormones and all of that contribute. Without those physical things, there would be no emotions to speak of. So again, I don't see anything left for a soul to be.
Well, and again, I mean, okay, you went through it and you explained that it can't be because you don't think that this could happen apart from the body. I mean, you're saying that you have to have all your body to have these near-death, but how do you, again, I'm talking about the near-death experiences and that people had, and like, there's things that they can't be explained. They often, I'm sure you've heard of it. People say they're outside their body and they're watching as they're working on them.
Sure.
And they can read things that they shouldn't know.
Well,
and
actually,
they couldn't see. And I mean, these are documented. They're the peer-reviewed instances. Many of them. And
I highly suggest.
How do you explain that?
I highly suggest you look into the scholarship more deeply because there has been intense scholarship done, and no results have been able to show that. There have been tons and tons of studies where they've hidden things so that somebody couldn't see them, and when they report a near-death experience, they ask them, did you see, whatever it was, and no, they didn't. And ultimately, I will answer the near-death experience thing because it is something that I went down a rabbit hole on and learned about. I'm going to give you a lay example because I'm not a professional in the field. But first, I do want to tell you that saying you can't explain it does not give you evidence for your claim. Mm-hmm. Right? Saying you can't explain it, that's the God of the gaps. Right. And
okay. Well, I mean, when you can't explain something, I mean, you want to look for the explanation of what it is. You want to investigate it. You want to say, is there anything to this? Just to say, well, you can't explain it, so I'm just going to say it's not right. I mean, that's kind of, come on.
No, so I'm absolutely following so far, and it is detrimental to assume what it is. What you should be doing is following the evidence wherever it leads. And I know I've given this example before, but do you know what phlogiston is, Fred?
Well, what is?
Phlogiston.
No.
So phlogiston was a concept that people had that they thought that phlogiston is what caused things to burn. And so when you had something that was burned, it was dephlogenated. And so there were attempts, really, scholarly attempts to try to isolate phlogiston. And in doing so, eventually they had to come to the realization that, no, that's not how it works. Phlogiston is not a thing. The same can be said for ether or for the humors, right? People thought, well, no, it's, yellow bile, black bile, was it blood, and one other. But people thought that all illness was caused by an imbalance of the humors. Mm-hmm. And that set us back. What we really want to do is we want to follow the evidence wherever it leads. And I don't think that the evidence has yet led to your conclusion. And so I don't see why you think it's reasonable to assert it.
Well, I mean, okay, you've said all these things, but really it's like, I mean, there's millions of people that have had these experiences, and, it's, I mean, you're just writing it off thinking that your explanations
no.
are good, good enough.
No,
I mean, to me, they go with, there is an afterlife. These people, I mean, they're medical instances where people, they're brain dead, their heart stopped, and they were resuscitated. They said 10% of the people with cardiac arrest have experienced this, and it's like, I've read that's from a book. It says it's a book. It says the science of near-death experiences, and it's like they have a lot of these cases, and they've studied it, and they're saying, hey, there is a good case. And now, because you're saying there's not a good case.
Actually, Fred, I have not done that yet, Fred. I have not done that yet. My argument gave you that.
You're saying that you told me there's not a good reason to believe that.
No, I said there's not a good reason to accept that your conclusion is correct.
Right. No one's disputing that near-death experiences occur. Like, people have had these experiences. We're just not convinced that it means that there's an actual afterlife.
Right.
And so even if we were to grant you this, that it was unexplained, which there have been tons of studies that have done that, and it has to do with lack of oxygen to the brain and how that affects your vision. It has a lot to do with what your culture is.
How memories are formed. You think about your brain experiences something that is traumatic. And then when you wake up, it tries to explain it to itself. And so it creates memories of a near-death experience based on what it was experiencing at the time, and also what your culture says is supposed to happen when you almost die or when you die. So your brain is actually trying to explain it after the fact.
And not only that, but there have been documented cases.
You're saying this as if it's fact. It's as if this is what happens. Like, I know and you don't.
So, Fred,
I'm saying,
we're actually the only ones offering an explanation that you can actually tangibly put a hand on, that you can actually study. We're not saying you don't know, therefore our conclusion. We're giving our best, examples and the best of what we know that describes that thing. Where's yours?
I'm saying that, what? They're having experiences.
Okay, we both agree. Now tell me how you know that those experiences point towards an afterlife, because we gave you is a physical, actual demonstration. No, you can demonstrate it. You don't just get to write the whole thing off because it doesn't follow your conclusion. No.
And neither do you. And neither do you.
I didn't, which is why when I started this, I granted your conclusion and still showed that you were wrong.
Oh, I don't think you showed that I was wrong.
Then listen back.
I see. You granted that you disagree with me. I mean, yeah, but are you saying? But you have not shown that there is no afterlife. Near death experience.
That's a shifting of the burden of proof, Fred.
We're not saying anything about an afterlife. You are.
We're saying we're not convinced by what you are giving us. So, what more can you give us to convince us of it?
Well, nothing.
Okay.
I mean, it's nothing really.
Then I think you should hold a higher standard for yourself there.
I think you should.
I do, actually. Thank you so much.
Because there's nothing else that I can attribute. But it doesn't mean that you've changed my mind, and I don't think that my standards no more lower than yours is.
Yes, it actually is demonstrably. I can show you.
Oh gosh.
No, really, honestly.
Gosh.
Honestly. No. Let me give you an example, Fred. Let me give you an example, right? Let's say I describe an event and I say you cannot explain how that event happened, and then I give you whatever the conclusion that I want is. I say, therefore leprechauns. Would you accept it? There was somebody who called in a while back that they said that they saw a bottle of Coke, of soda,
Coke. Yeah.
right, floating in front of them.
Bottle. Yeah. I was trying to call in that day.
Well, and therefore spirits.
Therefore, the atheist with his ex-witch wife next door.
Yes.
Which was, I'm still waiting for the sitcom on that.
Right. And I can add on to that, right? I could say, well, therefore pixies, therefore, trolls, therefore elves. All of those things are just postulates, right? You actually need to demonstrate something as possible before you can determine that it's probable. And that is a standard of evidence that is better than what you've given, Fred.
All this stuff is comparing God to, like a God to pixies and fairies and elves, and I find that kind of insulting, personally.
That's okay. I'm okay with that. Yeah. I respect you as a person. I don't respect the idea. I think that you can be a fantastic guy that I'd love to get a beer with, but I think that some people can have horrible ideas. And if we don't stand up and say, hey, honor killings are wrong, rape is wrong, that we create a system that shields.
That's wrong too.
I agree, and that's why I use that as an example. Yeah. We shield people from being held accountable for terrible actions. And you can be offended all you want. I'm not disrespecting you as a person. I'm disrespecting a bad idea. And I just gave you an example of, yes, my standards are higher than yours. I gave you an example of that, and you agreed.
No, I don't agree that your example. No, your standard is high. No, I don't agree with that, Eric.
Okay.
I'm saying that we have a difference of opinion, or we have a different way of looking at it, and your example is no more better than mine.
So,
or your, what you think it is
because it's offensive.
No, not because it's offensive. I'm saying because you don't know, you can't prove it. That's and I can't prove that there is a life after death. I can't prove, but what your interpretation of it isn't proved either. So therefore, we just have a difference of opinion.
No,
that's what I see.
But the difference is we are saying it's okay to say I don't know and not have a belief one way or the other about that thing. You are saying I don't know, therefore I am going to believe that something is true even though I don't know it.
Well, yeah, my whole life, there's more than just that, of course. I don't think we have the time to get into it. But, no. Me experiencing God and him, it's changing my life. And there's a lot, there's a lot more than that, that just affected. And, I've called in before and told you some of the other things too.
Right, but the point is you are using this one example and you're saying neither of us can know what happens after death. Neither of us can know. And so we are using the same standard of evidence.
It's not just one example. Like I said, it's more than, do you understand? It's not my only.
Well, so that's fine. I think if there's a takeaway though, I really want to hammer home what V just said. Excuse me.
You want to what?
Sorry. I want to hammer home what V just said. And that is that when we say it's okay to say I don't know, we're not just as bad as or just making the same kind of claim. When you say I don't know, you give yourself permission to explore. When you say I don't know, therefore my own conclusion, you're cutting yourself off. Those are not equal. Those are not equivalent. We're not saying this is what happened.
But again,
we're saying
my conclusion, I said, is based on my conclusion is based on what what evidence was I getting was other people's experiences. It wasn't just my own experience.
We didn't talk about your experience, Fred. That doesn't matter. We're talking about the concept as a whole. We're not even talking about your experience. We're talking about this entire idea is one that needs to be binned until there's evidence that points to it.
And, like I said, 10 million people saying that they've had afterlife experiences, and, maybe they're right. Maybe they have had. And that's something I don't think that you guys you don't want that to be. So you're unwilling to really, even think of that because
Fred, I think I think it's sad that you would write off what we're saying as we don't want it to be true when we're giving you the autonomy to say what what you have to say.
You think it's sad, but you write off what I think or what I think it could be. You write it off and give your explanation. So it's sad when I do it, but it's good when you do it?
Sure. We're not writing you off by saying you don't want it to be true. Did we do that at all? No.
Did you do that?
No.
Yes, I believe you have. Yes.
Okay. Well,
I believe that you're unwilling. I believe that you're unwilling to think that as a possibility.
I think when there's...
I think we're in the wrong show if we're unwilling to consider possibilities.
Absolutely.
That's what we think.
When people call in, we meet them where they're at. We listened to your explanations. We talked about it. We dove into what those things were. And we gave you answers that don't jive with what your response was. But listen back. We did not write you off.
I could be wrong. It wouldn't be the first time.
Oh, no worries. That happens to everybody, man. But I hope that you listen back. I'm definitely going to listen back to this call because if I did write you off, I do want to publicly apologize because that's the right thing to do.
Well, and again, even, I know you don't. I know that's not your intentions. I really like you guys, and I know that you're nice people, and I have nothing against you. But I do believe that's what you did. I will listen back, though.
Cheers, man.
Okay.
Then you're totally welcome to call back.
Okay.
Until then, take care.
Okay. You have a great day. Bye-bye.
You too. Yeah.
Wow.
I know.
You made a friend.
What's funny is when those kinds of disagreements happen, those are the people that I'm up until 4 a.m. just talking to. Mm-hmm. And really, it was those kinds of conversations that pushed me in this direction in my life.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
Because I love it. I love it. How do you know what you know? Is that a reliable way to know things? Are you being consistent? Are you postulating a thing for no good reason? Do I have a good reason to think what I'm thinking? It's fantastic. It's skepticism. And even in the atheist movement, we should be calling out our own side on this, there aren't enough skeptics. To be a skeptic, you do put yourself in uncomfortable situations. Who cares? When you put yourself through that discomfort and you're able to work through whatever it is that made you uncomfortable, you should be able to come out the other end with a better understanding of what it was.
Or if you were right on, 100% accurate, then you come out with that.
Yeah.
That's probably not the case, though.
At least not, well, yeah. when it comes to definitions, maybe, but